session of the day, which is going to be a panel discussion on financing of green hydrogen projects. While the seats are being set up, I'll introduce the panelists one by one. We have with us Mr. Siddharth Gauba, Senior Vice President at Eversource Capital. Eversource manages the largest single country climate fund in the emerging markets with investments across energy transition, industrial decarbonization, and urban sustainability. Mr. Gauba holds bachelor's and master's degrees in engineering from Cornell University, US, and has completed a postgraduate program in management from the Indian School of Business. Then we have with us Mr. Abhinav Sultania, energy and energy transition specialist at Asian Development Bank. He has about 13 years of professional experience in risk and safety engineering and management for global energy sector clients in the USA with Atkins and Technip, and in business finance for transportation infrastructure, projects for Indian states and central government clients with ECOM. He's previously worked on FDI transaction advisory, investment promotion, policy advisory, economic advisory for leading Indian state governments, multinational businesses, and international agencies. At ADB, he's responsible for policy assessment, capacity building, and state-level strategy development. He holds master degrees in civil engineering, general management, and energy finance from University of Texas, and XLRI Jamshedpur, and University of Houston. Then we have with us Mr. Shrvan Yadav, Vice President, Energy Sector at SBI Capital Markets. He has over 18 years of experience in investment banking and project execution. He has been advising clients on fundraising and M&A transactions in energy, green hydrogen, fertilizers, and infrastructure sector. He has an MBA from IIM Bangalore and a BTech from IIT Roorkee. He's also a CFA charter holder. Great. May request all the panelists to please join me on the stage. Right. I'll start with you, Mr. Gauba. In your introduction, I mentioned what Eversource does, but could you mention to people who might not be knowing here about what is the exposure in clean energy financing in terms of maybe the kind of projects that you've invested in, or in terms of the capacity that Eversource has invested in?
Sure. Thanks, Khushbu. Good afternoon, everyone. So, like Khushbu mentioned, Eversource is the emerging markets' largest single country climate fund. We have our first fund at $740 million, which we have deployed, across 7 companies in India. Now, in terms of our areas of investment, the first one is renewable energy, where we are investors in, Ayana, which is kind of a utility scale, renewables player. We are also, investors in Radiance Renewables, which provides renewable energy to CNI consumers. In e-mobility, we have 2 companies. One is Lithium, which kind of does corporate employee transportation, and Green Cell, which is a EV-based bus operator. We are also a leading player in the waste management space with EverEnviro, where we are in collection and transportation of waste, construction and demolition waste recycling, renewable natural gas. And we also have a climate NBFC, where we provide lending for rooftop and for EVs.
Okay. I'll move to you, Mr. Sultania. We all know what ADB is, but could you just give us a brief on the bank's exposure in renewable energy financing in India?
First of all, thank you, Khushbu, for having me here, and thank you, everyone, to patiently hear me. So ADB, as Khushbu mentioned, is quite well known, and ADB is the climate bank of Asia and the Pacific. I will just give a very brief introduction. It's there in the public domain, 68 member countries.
Sultania, could you keep the mic?
Yeah. So ADB has announced a $100 billion investment pipeline in clean energy financing over the next 7 years, which accounts to almost $7 billion a year moving ahead. And last year it did around $6.5 billion US investments in clean energy financing. The technologies which they look across are as per the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. They look at all the technologies across clean energy financing, but the primary focus has been on definitely green hydrogen, industrial decarbonization, port-led growth, doing more on solar rooftop, solarization, renewable energy, and it has been investing since early years in 2010 when the first solar park came in the country, in India, and has the highest investments in energy sector, power sector to be specific in India, which accounts around 15% of the investment, totaling around $15 billion US. And India is the biggest borrower with $54 billion US when it comes to overall sectors. The overarching sectors include transportation, water, urban, infrastructure, but primary focus is on anything which reduces emissions, enhances the carbon market development, and enhances the poverty reduction and development of the society is the major focus.
Right. Mr. Yadav, SBI CAP's exposure to renewable.
Hello. Hi, good afternoon. So SBI CAP is 100% subsidiary of State Bank of India, and we are basically investment banking arm of State Bank of India. And we have been pioneer in the project financing, and we have been number one based on various international ranking. As far as the green financing or RE financing and that format of the fertilizer kind of financing also for renewable energy sector, I think almost all projects we have advised. We have been advising all the developers in their financing. And as far as SBI Group is concerned, I think mostly 30 to 40% of the total exposure SBI Group has taken. In the fertilizer, like Mr. Ryan mentioned that 6 plant has come under NIP 12 and including Talcher fertilizer, which is based on the coal gasification. That is done by my team particularly, and wherein the SBI has been lead bank in all the consortiums of these all 6 fertilizer plants, including Ramagundam fertilizer, HURL, and Talcher fertilizer, and Chambal fertilizer, and around 30 to 40% exposure in each consortium SBI has taken. So to summarize that, we have been as a SBI CAP in pioneer in the project financing in all. Either it was like first LNG project which was funded for PLL project, Dahej, then fertilizer plants. There is no guarantee neither in the PLL at that time, nor in the any fertilizer plant, not in any renewable plant. We are taking any corporate guarantee of the promoters. All these projects are funded basically on the merit of cash flow of the project. Debt servicing is done on the cash flow of the projects with limited sponsor undertaking for project completion or equity and management per se. And CGD sector, which has been kind of now the big sector after government push after 9th and 10th round. And we have been funding the CGD sector starting from IGL days. So all the new sectors we have been funding, and we have been advising the clients from very start. We get involved in the project when I think 2-3 years before it get approval from their respective promoter board or company board.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Now we'll get to the green hydrogen questions. We have about 30 minutes, so I'll request for short responses, and we'll go round to each of the panelists one by one. And starting with there's been a lot of discussion on what are the major pain points for green hydrogen. Is it offtake? Is it cost? Is it the connected infrastructure? So starting with you, Mr. Gauba, the top consideration for financiers in financing such green hydrogen projects.
Sure, thanks. So I think, several of the discussions in the day also have covered on various aspects of it. If you look at it, we are talking about a very capex intensive business model. And fundamentally, there is a mismatch between the, investment cycle, the life of the plants, which may be, 20, 25 years, and the offtake, which we are talking about, 5 to 7 years. If you're able to match offtake and, kind of the offtake, tie that up with the capital, requirement, that kind of solves one part. The other aspect also is, the technology risk. As we have discussed, electrolyzer technology, other pathways, they are under development. Now, we have seen this before in renewables in other areas, but we are yet to traverse that curve. So until we traverse that curve, for any investor, getting the confidence on project economics, that kind of challenge has to be, kind of solved. And I think if we look at, all the, projects that have been announced globally and in India, only around 5-6% have reached, FID stage. And I think these are the challenges where, kind of we have seen, things kind of getting stuck. If we are able to solve that, then I think any investor would be able to make a risk-adjusted return decision.
Right. Mr. Sultania, he spoke about CAPEX, he also spoke about the technology. Any other considerations that you would like to add?
Yeah, so most of the things have been discussed, as Siddharth already mentioned that. But the most important thing which Siddharth touched upon is probably globally we have only 4% of the project in FID stage. And we all are discussing only the pilot projects at this moment. None of them are actual demonstrable scale project. So across the value chain, there is a huge challenge of fixing each element of pricing, off-taker, demand, insurance, infrastructure, maintenance, and variable instruments. How to create those entire structure with geography in place. Who is the buyer? Where is the buyer? All these needs to be addressed at a project level or at an aggregated project level. And looking at economies of scale, doing a bigger projects is going to solve these type of problems. It's not going to be the pilots project. They are good to learn, but we have to start looking at bigger projects beyond what we are already doing. We have to scale it up. It's going to be pricey, and solar was also very pricey when it started. Just coming back to the original question, anything has been pricey. Even I remember as a child, like just quoting a very simple example, everything starts with a very high price. Nothing is cheap, and a good thing comes with a good price as well. So we have to probably start looking at doing larger scale projects. And India, for sure, has an advantage here, given the cost competitiveness in India is where the exports market can be explored very easily, and there is a huge potential given the cost differential between the different geographies. And in one of the studies with Niti Aayog, it is also mentioned that probably India has the lowest cost when it comes to any of the derivatives or green hydrogen manufacturing, products manufacturing, and be it green ammonia. And with the right set of structuring at a project, we can probably achieve those projects.
All right. Mr. Yadav, you would like to add to what both the panelists have said, or do you agree, disagree, or do you have any other input?
Yeah, so my first point is that why the bank funding or debt funding is very important for the development of this sector. See, this is very capital intensive sector. I think there are lots of startup also, but most of the startups has been there where the funding requirement was not much. But this is the sector where funding requirement, just to give you ballpark figure, like we are talking 1 million ton ammonia. If you want to set up 1 million ton ammonia, so you require around 4 gigawatt of RE power, and you require around $4 billion of the capex. $4 billion means you require at least $3 billion of the debt funding, which is huge, And the major challenge, so first I will say what are the positive where lenders are getting the comfort. That lenders have been funding both sides. They have been funding renewable energy. Now there are kind of good understanding in the banks, and all the RE developer are getting very good rates, pricing wise, and debt equity also up to 80%, which is not generally it's funded 2:1 or 17:30 max. But RE is the one sector where debt is going up to 80%. And second side, like if you go for derivative, ammonia side, so bank has been funding all the fertilizer plant which contains your ammonia units, and the technology and all those things well established. So remaining part is only your green hydrogen, basically electrolyzer part, where banks, because it's a very initial stage, everybody is on the learning curve. They would kind of face challenge. There are two parts to it. That what kind of electrolyzer technology they should use now, which should be cost competitive, and it should not happen that by the time the product comes, and then new technology at very low cost is there, and their cost is unaffordable. So that's one challenge. And second challenge which lenders ask that the kind of vision and aspiration we have for the green hydrogen or green ammonia, whether the electrolyzer manufacturer will keep pace with that or not. That's also one challenge there. And before I come to the main challenge, another challenge in the RE. So India is blessed with the kind of availability of RE power, and it is understood that our RE power is one of the lowest at one of the lowest cost. So we have huge potential for green ammonia kind of export. And so in a sense, its green ammonia is nothing but a carrier for transportation of green energy, kind of renewable power. So there is not challenge, but challenge will come the RTC power, because all the renewable RE power which banks have funded, they have funded based on the PPI, either SECI, NTPC, or state discoms. But here the RTC power would be required to run the plant continuously. That's the one thing, and RTC power cost is higher than your normal RE power. So that's the one challenge where banks will look into detail that what is the cost and all those things. And the main challenge which is coming, everybody talks about, is the offtake agreement. Offtake agreement is not that offtake you can get, but mainly is the commercial viability, that cost competitiveness. Like Mr. Rai mentioned, like ammonia, green ammonia, and in the normal times, your green ammonia is at least 2 times costlier than your normal ammonia, gray ammonia. So unless there is certain kind of encouragement or nudge from the government across the world, not only in India, across the world, where kind of certain percentage usage is either made mandatory or they are being given, because mandatory word is kind of non-political, so it becomes a very sensitive word, but at least government gives some incentive to nudge them to use the green ammonia gradually or green hydrogen gradually, so that during the kind of the transition period where everybody understands that new technology will come, the cost of ammonia or green hydrogen going to come down. But during this phase, when the cost is still high, like in the wind energy, there was feed-in tariff. In the solar, basically to promote renewable energy, there was feed-in tariff. That kind of system should be there in place to incentivize the usage of the green ammonia, green hydrogen in India, because in India there is huge demand. Like whatever plan government has in national green hydrogen mission, the entire 5 million MTPA, if converted into the green ammonia, entire can be used in our ammonia fertilizer plants. Entire capacity can be utilized. Similarly, the refineries and steel sector. So some nudge is required till the time the development happens. That's all.
Right. Mr. Gauba, taking insights from what Mr. Yadav has just said about the policy and the incentives and the nudge required, government has already announced a series of incentives and, so do you think we need more of these to make these projects bankable or to invite more financing? Or do you think in the long run, we don't need these kinds of, subsidies or?
Sure. So, I think in any industry, the kind of incentives required vary and change from, depending on the level of evolution. What was required for renewables 10 years ago versus what is required today is very different. If I look at, the PLI schemes that we have, so that's kind of a, step that we have taken as part of the National Hydrogen Mission. If we look worldwide, there are a multitude of solutions. So I think we have to evaluate which solutions make sense for India, and similarly, globally, bodies can decide, what makes sense. If you look at, on the, we have kind of taken it on the production side, where we are talking about electrolyzer production or hydrogen production. There are also, other schemes like, the IRA's income tax credit in a way. Right. Then, if we talk about other sources of capital, there's concessional capital that has made a difference in the past in other sectors. There is also first loss capital that is available from multilateral agencies. So that's kind of on the production side. If I look at kind of on the demand side, there has been contract for difference that has made kind of impact globally. If you look at Japan, France, UK in the renewable energy sector, I think last year UK has announced contract for difference for hydrogen as well, and other countries are considering that. Something like that. In renewables, we had SECI be a demand aggregator. Demand aggregation again to solve this offtake question. That can be kind of one of the solutions that can be seen from a policy perspective.
All right, Mr. Sultania, a slightly different question for you. There are countries like Oman, Saudi Arabia, which are emerging as big green hydrogen hotspots, and some of these countries have very interesting provisions. Like Oman, for instance, is building common infrastructure to carry water to the project sites, and then also pipelines to carry the green hydrogen to the ports. So, in view of all of this, and with being from ADB, how do you see India emerging as a green hydrogen player in the overall export market?
So, without being too political, I think India is doing a lot of projects already. Lot of schemes has come. They have got the pilot scheme, R&D scheme is there. National Green Hydrogen Mission, which has the site scheme. 10 projects has been awarded under it already. Site 2 is already done. But given the context you are asking, I do agree that there is a need for bigger push. And the question of the way we see at ADB is seeing the entire decarbonization or green hydrogen or climate change of creating this value chain is around 3 ways we are looking at. One is green hydrogen as a commodity. It's near port or an industrial cluster hub-based commodity is one of the ways of looking at it. The second one is industrial decarbonization in all the manufacturing sectors of steel, cement, refining, fertilizer. So, and then the third one is the distributed stage where we are reaching the last mile connectivity in CGD distribution, TPPs, where blending with the natural gas. So, coming back to your question, Khushbu, the answer lies creating that giant infrastructure in the port-based project. When we are looking at the bigger projects, the port-led development or maybe an industrial hub development is where the solution lies for bigger challenges. And that will be where India will also start to move.
And that will help bring the cost down.
Bring the cost down and scale up the manufacturing, bring the risk down, and even become an export leader. Like Paradeep already has all the concentrated projects for exporting in the SEZ. So coming back to what Mr. Rai was also mentioning, that green ammonia is a commodity in demand, and it's already seeing the prices as was shown, $650 US per ton, and in maybe in couple of projects, once they start reaching FIDs, the prices will start going down. It will go down to immediately $550 US, because simultaneously the input costs are going down. The margins are getting narrowed, and renewable energy is becoming cheaper day by day. So there are several elements which will help.
Right. Mr. Yadav, when we look at green hydrogen projects, so as financiers, do you just look at the green hydrogen production system in isolation? Or do you also look at the entire ecosystem regarding water, regarding renewable energy generation, regarding the storage, transport? Do you look at the entire ecosystem when you consider financing of green hydrogen projects, or just the production of green hydrogen?
As a financer, basically, we look the entire value chain. Value chain means like starting from if raw material is there, the sourcing is there. And then technology, either what are the technology and what are the plants, and then land requirement. Land requirement becomes major in any project, even for the green hydrogen, because if you have land, there is that gives lots of comfort. And if you have like the kind of, suppose that if I take example of green hydrogen, so if I am putting my own captive power plant RE capacity, so at least we should have location identified, at least land identified, and by the time you go for the final sanction, in principle sanction can be done, but by the time you go for final sanction and finally they commit to you by signing the loan agreement, you should have land availability. At least you should have acquired the land for that, land for your this green hydrogen, green ammonia plant, chemical plant, and the offtake agreement. Offtake agreement, I mean that for the longer term at a viable price. At a viable price would be there, otherwise it will affect the kind of debt serviceability. So it looks the entire value chain, and in India, like I said, project finance is there, but as a lender, we give lots of importance to the capability, either it's financial or execution capability of promoters. So promoters are also very important. I think in the past, like I think if I go 6-7 years back, so banks were shying away the funding the projects which were promoted by the P funds, because their thought was that if something goes wrong, who they are going to kind of hold accountable. But now they have kind of developed that understanding, and all those funds are getting funded, because renewable, if you see, most of the platforms are funded by strong foreign P funds, either sovereign or private funds or pension funds. So they have kind of kind of developed that understanding, but still the promoter, strong promoter in the terms of financial strength, in the terms of execution capability is very important, apart from the overall project structure. And then they look at the contractual structure, which is very important. That's they appoint your legal consultant also, who advise them entire legal structure and what is the shareholding and structure and who are the participant, and security structure. That is very important for them, and the cash flow, because if it is going to be project finance players without corporate guarantee kind of things, so control on the monitoring of the cash flow, all those things are very important for them. So they look at the entire value chain and appraise the project in totality. So that's why if you see the financial closure, which we say, if you have equity, title, and financial closure when you sign the document, so which I understand from the industry, promoters are saying that for signing the firm term sheet or firm offtake agreement, they need financial closure, because financial closure is a very big signal to indicate the viability of the project per se on its commercial basis, standalone commercial basis.
Right. Mr. Gauba, globally, I think that there are a lot of discussions around how blended finance will play a very big role in green hydrogen financing. Do you think that's going to be the case in India as well?
Yeah, so you're right. Blended finance in multiple ways, whether it is concessional capital, first loss capital, TA grants, they have all played a big role. If I talk about technology development, in the past, concessional capital and TA kind of funds have played a lot of role in terms of pilot projects and proving their viability. Now, like we discussed, a lot of pilot projects are underway, not just in India and but globally. As we kind of go along, those funds can be beneficial to kind of help scale those up, to get them to a pre-commercialization and commercialization stage. Post which, when we talk about, kind of either a PE investment or kind of a large conglomerates investing, if you look at, concessional capital coming in, that can, especially for the first set of projects, it can, change the risk return profile, and it can help catalyze, private capital. And that's something we have seen, globally and in India in the past, in various sectors. So I think definitely there's an important role for various, forms of concessional capital, first-class capital. Even in India, if we talk about priority sector lending, those kind of instruments to really bridge that gap, and kind of move the industry along, until it reaches that, economic viability.
Mrs. Sultania, the top risk that you see, I know we spoke about a couple of them, but if you had to pick out the top one, which would it be? From a financier's point of view.
The top risk is basically it's not just one risk, because
That's why I asked top
Yeah.
risk.
so it's a very so the top risk is basically having a right off taker.
Okay.
I think is having a there is already a demand, but putting up the technology is quite stabilizing in that sense. And when we look at having that off taker in a project, and how the structure of the project has been set up is very important. Whether the the incentives and the PLIs, or even they have been accounted for or not, is where it boils down to. Eventually, being any banking institution will look at the project IRRs, equity IRR, ROI. So they will look at the top risk is always about how is the bankability of the project. And by bankability, it has to be there is a buyer, and then we have to create that a mechanism by identifying the right, set of everything from infrastructure and identifying the right set of incentives, the project structuring, because each project has the financing structure which will be different for each project, and at least for a large scale project, and most of the projects can be structured financially in a way that there is always a positive return. There are so many plethora of financing instruments which I probably believe MDBs are not the best at, but Eversource and SBI will be better to answer that question. But all the instruments available should be leveraged in the best possible manner to create those structures.
Right. Mr. Yadav, to end and then move to the audience questions, what is the top policy development or policy intervention that should happen to reduce some of these risks that we've just spoken about?
From the banking perspective, I say Abhinav mentioned that this green hydrogen should be given the status like in the priority sector lending or the infrastructure status, which gives the banks gives some preference treatment for this sector. The banks being the green attribute, green hydrogen, everybody is keen, because now the net zero target is not only for the corporates, it's for banks also. So everybody is keen to fund these kind of project, but like top risk, which we are mentioning, that's the affordability. We talk in other sense, it's called affordability. So I am saying everybody talking about the offtake. It's not because there is not market is there, but it's not affordable. The day it is affordable, no bank is going to ask you for the long-term offtake, because like banks are funding, like you can see like your refineries, they are funding. There is no long-term offtake. They are funding the petrochemical market, which is the biggest growing in India. So lots of petrochemical plants are coming in India with a huge investment. But there is no offtake. But that's a commodity where cyclicality is there, but they know there is demand, there would be prices, and in the long term, there would be affordability. So affordability is the major challenge. So till the time it becomes affordable, government have to, I am not saying what kind of policy, but they have to give certain incentive. Like site 1 was, site 1 is already there. But to my understanding, whatever the amount the developer have quoted, I don't think that is going to make that project viable with that amount. So I think more at two front, more fiscal incentive, I think for the initial projects, and also like I mentioned that there should be some incentive to the refiners, to the fertilizer companies, to the steel makers for using the green hydrogen or green ammonia at least till the time it becomes affordable. So challenge is here there, like I said, like electricity. Electricity is your necessity. So energy security is necessity, even its higher price, you will like fertilizer is there. So fertilizer, ultimately, if you say fertilizer is the government is funding, it's all subsidy. So there government has to give. But here what is there is already gray ammonia is available, gray hydrogen is available. So till the time there is certain kind of incentive or it becomes affordable, nobody has any incentive to use that because the things are going on. No life is affected. So everything is going on, business is going on. So it's a setup. It's not like energy security where either you have to run on the coal, you have to revive or implement more coal-based plant. We are doing that. Even we know that coal is more polluting. So here is that the substitute which we are substituting is well established. Unless you make it affordable, either through policy or through technology, it is going to be challenged.
Right. All right. On that note, we are going to take a few short questions or comments from the audience. Yes, we can go to the fourth row. Request for one short question, please.
Can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me now? Yeah. Hi, I am Vipul from S&P Global. So I wanted to ask, let's say you sign an offtake agreement for 10, 15 years, right? Then your risk starts again after those 15 years, right? So what do we need other than support policies, because the governments do not have unlimited money? So what do we need from the government so that the hydrogen economy can stand on its own legs?
You want to address it to a particular panel?
No, anyone can answer.
Who would like to take that up?
Okay, I will take up this question. So if you can get the 10 to 15 year offtake agreement, so like Abhinav said, there are lots of structure which bank can do because 10 year is the long period, and most of the lenders, I think the availability of your tenor is also 12 to 15 year, because beyond 15 year it becomes very challenging unless you have commensurate long-term PPA and all those things. So there could be put and call option, and all those things can be managed, or kind of certain structure, or you build up like in fertilizer plant, there is policy says it will be only for 8 years. So there are certain that you start building kind of nearing your 10-year completion, you start building certain kind of reserve to take care of your tail period if it is there. But that you don't have to build today. Maybe after 10-year market is so developed that you can get the kind of your offtake, either with the same offtaker or the new offtaker, and you have the viability. So those things can be structured. If you can get 10 to 15-year PPA and at affordable price, I don't think you need any incentive from government for that matter.
Right. Any question? Yes, please go to the second row.
Thank you, panelists. I have two questions. One is actually when we see the historical perspective.
Sir, can you be a little louder, please?
Yeah, when historical perspective, when we see, when the telecom came in 2000 and all, Himachal Futuristic, so many companies, they came with a higher price, then so many things got busted. Then e-commerce came, it got busted. Then wind energy, NEPC, Micon and all, they have set up so many things and they got busted. So many things happened. Historically, when we are seeing everything starts at higher price and something non-performing assets and all they will become a non-performing assets. Then government intervenes. Then they give some incentives, force incentives and all. Telecom sector is one example. Government has given a lot of incentives and then they made the telecom sector grow up. And that's how it became popular and all. So do you see any NPAs or anything in the coming days in the green hydrogen sector? One. Second thing is we have gas exchange, then we have got, so many exchanges like gold exchange, so many things and all. I think it is better to have a green hydrogen exchange or green ammonia exchange also set up in the initially itself so that it can be traded, in a better perspective. So what are your comments? Thank you.
Right. Regarding MPs, I think too early to comment, but would anyone like to take that up?
So maybe I'll just take up, both the responses. So on NPL, like you said, I think in any industry, we would see, different levels of corporate performance, and companies scaling up, being able to scale up, not being able to scale up. So I think that's, still very, very early days right now. But if I talk about number two, talking about the exchange, in power, right? We've seen green power, being traded, on the exchanges. Ammonia, gray ammonia is already a, a very well traded commodity globally. So, adding a green flavor of that, for a green ammonia global trade, I think makes imminent sense. Similarly, when we talk about hydrogen as well, I think hydrogen, depending on the use cases that develop, I think that's something that, can definitely, be a good way to kind of aggregate demand and to bring buyers and sellers. And, like some of the comments were made, you don't necessarily need offtake if, commercial viability is demonstrated. You don't need offtake contracts. You can trade power today, and you can get funding for power projects without offtake contract because it's known, what kind of prices you will get on the exchange. So I think there's definitely room and scope for hydrogen exchange, ammonia exchange, and that may be offered by current commodities exchanges, or there could be additional purpose-specific exchanges as well.
Right. Time for just one more question or comment, if there is any. No. In that case, we'll close this session. Oh, you have right. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, hats off to the developers yesterday. And this is a very uncertain landscape. And political situation in India is also very, very dynamic. If you talk of states, it's the most uncertain. At least there is a certain level of stability because we have seen in the past when a new government comes, it scraps all the old policies. I have seen big industries winding up shop because of the change of government. So how do you see this as a risk in the financing this? Because of two things. One is regulatory and then the political policy uncertainties.
Policy and regulatory uncertainty, how do you see that coming up as a risk?
See, these green hydrogen or green ammonia is coming from your climate change or sustainability goal, which is kind of not limited to India. This is kind of worldwide phenomena, and India is also party to these organizations and these commitments. So like one of my professor used to say, once someone asked him in the 90s when government was changing, so he has very funny answer that in India, the philosophically government changes, but direction doesn't change. Only thing is that policy is more streamlined, push is more, same UIDI, Aadhaar card was there, same MREGA was there. Only things, the usage, policy, different government had different kind of outlook. Someone is streamlined. There is some government can have policy paralysis. Some government has too much focus, like CGD. CGD has been there for so long, but after this government has heads off to that, they have kind of taken it to such a big, huge level that now I think entire nation is covered at least for the CGD policy. That implementation is the second part, at least policy-wise they have done. So as far as policy is concerned, policy per se, I don't see any challenge even the government changes. Because RE policy is there, even the governments have changed, but either feed-in tariff or that your this new policy, only thing focus has got more. That's the only thing. So I don't think that any policy is going to be reversed if government changes. Only thing, the kind of momentum which we have got, that may be affected. If suppose that it takes around 5 years from here to have a vibrant green hydrogen, green ammonia market, it may take 10 years. That is the only challenge I see.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. On that note, we're going to close.